Hey, this is Max Alper, aka Parrotsky, and you are listening to Group Critique Fight Club. Yes, indeed. We are back, baby. We are back. Starting with some lovely field recordings as usual. You can't copyright claim this shit. This is some original found sound for you. Gonna keep that a running theme. You guys should send me some field recordings as lobby music. The field recording is 900 dB louder than my mic. Yeah, we'll bring it up just a little bit here. But yeah, that's because the field recording is mixed and mastered. Meanwhile, I'm doing what I can with this live audio. Turn your headphones up live. Just so y'all know, we're also doing this on podcast platforms after the fact. It will be mixed and mastered and uploaded as an audio document for those that want to tune in later, or if you want to listen to part of it live and part of it later. Whatever you want. Probably not going to be keeping the videos of the live streams up beyond just as a ephemeral live stream. This is temporary. Sound is forever. You know what I'm saying? We're hanging. Welcome back, those that are here. Hold on. We got my mod in chat. Keeping an eye on things. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the second official episode of the Group Critique Fight Club Public Night School Edition, Mondays here at 7 p.m. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you are ready to listen to some work in progress music and talk about it. But most importantly, listen to it. I'm looking forward to it. We're just going to get right into it here, going back to our stream, going back to our chat on the Discord, and where we left off was with Wish Fulfillment. Wish Fulfillment is here, I believe. What's up? And you have written to us looking for some feedback on the first 5 minutes of a new live set I'm working out, tailoring for eventual release. This is the most recent performance. All right. Thank you for letting us know which segment of the set you want us listening to. We're going to listen to the first 5 minutes or so, and then we shall discuss. Looking forward to this. Loading this up here. Silence so far. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Give it up. Hearts in the chat, hundreds in the chat, hundreds in the chat, hundreds in the chat, etc., etc., etc. Give it up for wish fulfillment. Thank you for your submission. What a great way to start. Real eye-opener. Real, palate cleanser, palate neutralizer. This goes hard because although there are certainly louder moments, I think that the almost equal emphasis on silence, negative space versus positive space is super important here. I was just talking about this with a private student earlier today. I feel like there's this need in Western music canon in general, all the way back to Baroque, in that like virtuosity at an instrument or excelling musically requires being virtuosic in the sense that you are shredding fast, that you are constantly grinding away at your instrument, that you are you're remaining busy musically. And I think that there is a need to decolonize. I think there's a need amongst a lot of, even within the harsh noise and electroacoustic academic electroacoustic or sound art or basement dwelling harsh noise, because as the very famous t-shirt says, the difference between sound art and noise is institutional funding. Bars. Regardless of context as to which side of the institutional funding one might be on in this world, there tends to be a lot of oversaturation of the waveforms, not a lot of space, a lot of busyness, and in fact, very much continuation of the Western tradition of virtuosity equals being busy, having a full sound at all times. And I think that there are plenty of artists out there that understand that silence in the context of this, of very, very at times abrasive electroacoustic improvisation or noise performance, and I mean abrasive as far as timbre goes, noise based, lowercase if you want to call it that, not necessarily harsh in decibel output, but not pitched based for the most part, though there are a few various layers that make pitch in this, and we'll talk about that. But in this context of whatever we want to call this music, the usage of silence and the usage of space can be just as abrasive, just as confrontational and uncomfortable potentially as some of the loudest and room clearing abrasive in timbre and volume and all other attributes. And it's really just about how you create this balance between positive and negative space of sound versus silence, and to do so dramatically is the key. There are some harsh noise artists that fall under this category that they call cut up noise, pretty famously sort of coined by this artist Chris Goudreau, who performs under the name Sickness, though that's pretty hard to SEO, that search engine optimization. I guess if you looked up Sickness noise, that'll narrow it down, but look up Chris Goudreau if you're curious of what I'm talking about. He doesn't use, okay, so this is cool because you're talking about Wish Fulfillment in the chat is talking about using the stereo field touch plate, and that is exactly what this artist Chris Goudreau and in general the cut up noise community does is they focus much of their attention, whether it be in modular Eurorack setups or homemade mixing devices that utilize the tools like kill switches through touch plates, aka if you touch it, there's sound. If you let go, the switch has been killed. There's zero signal, and it's only one or the other. The what's awesome about the landscape stereo field is that there are varying degrees to create sort of velocity changes and textures, and not just have it be a toggle on and off switch. But maybe that's what makes it within the harsh noise community so harsh, is that there's no room necessarily for smooth envelopes and changes, nuanced changes in voltage velocity, and rather that it's just on off, so incredibly percussive, and when dealing with loud sounds can be incredibly impactful. So that's what's nice about this, is that there are at times very percussive, sharp attacks in the envelope, and at other times smooth, almost like the snow of white noise coming in, and then it cuts. You know, this is what's feels really nice, and it seems like you're pretty comfortable with your instrument and your setup here, is that it the handmade aspect of this is coming across very clearly to me. It feels very live, so much so that I wish we could be watching you, not to be like, I want to look at your hands, I want to see all the details of how you're doing this, but there is this incredibly human sort of attribute to even just controlling through that stereo field. It's really it feels quite nicely structured, and maybe this is just your instincts as an improviser to be starting out with very little and kind of slowly ebbing and flowing and opening up the range of these sounds. There's some other sounds we're hearing too. You have the stereo field touch play instrument with a big reverb pedal in feedback, okay, an Ableton, a big delay pedal, it plays back the rhythmic elements. Okay, so some of those slightly pitched bells and low-end sub electronic drum elements, we did hear a bit of that here. But my ear is gravitating even more so towards the stereo field. And I think that is my critique, is that those sounds played through Ableton sound sequenced, sound automated, looped to some extent, versus the stereo field sounds incredibly free-form, freely improvised, handmade. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could match that energy, in the very least, or at least the imperfect, non-perfectly quantized, looped. It felt like we were hearing a conversation between accompanying sequential instruments and our solo stereo field noise front and center. And that could be a arrangement choice of yours. Maybe you do want there to be this contrast between somewhat repetitive Ableton synthesized elements and then this very live and front and center lead noise element. But to me, it's like, I would personally rather hear this as one linear path through and through, noise and Ableton elements included. Let me get into the conversation of like, how can we create generative elements that are still like slightly randomized, slightly controlled randomization. And I mean, like, maybe it's about finding ways to like randomize the clock that is triggering these loops in Ableton. If there's a way to generate a roll of the dice every time it repeats as to when the next, how much space is between each repetition. It could be somewhat randomized. It could be very sudden. It could be quite long. I don't know. Personally, I feel like just as the form goes, if this is a 5-minute piece in and of itself, not like removed from the live set nature of this, like you said, this is a segment of a live set, but just thinking about this as a 5-minute piece in and of itself, I would much rather hear it everything somewhat handmade, or at least the illusion of imperfect and random, whether it be by hand or through some creative modularity that you can create that controlled randomization in Ableton so that the clock isn't perfect and that there are changes, vast or minute. To me, that would make it feel more cohesive between parts, because there are very clear distinctions of parts. And to me, it feels like it would all just meld together so much more nicely in that context. If we had this, you're in an improvisational duo with the machine, with the computer here, and it's going to throw some wild pitches at you, and you're going to have to respond with pitches of your own back. Becomes very conversational that way, rather than a formulaic in utilizing looped elements in Ableton. Got some comments here. Someone wrote, really appreciated the addition of elements, the use of space and silence, and the eventual introduction of a rhythmic tick. Yeah, I mean, I see the vision in utilizing a common meter for those rhythmic elements. I definitely see the vision. Personally, I just felt more like once it filled the space, there was much less silence when we started to hear the ticks, and part of me wanted there to be like even maybe just variations, divisions of the tempo, and not necessarily just hearing it straight the way that we did. Joshua writes, shocked by how non-abrasive it is on my ears, despite how easily music like this could be unlistable for me. Would be interested to hear where this goes and what this becomes. Yeah, it's true. I mean, you heard it here, folks. Noise doesn't need to be scary. This is why I guess they did make the distinction of lowercase music, the distinction of noise as in a lowercase noises versus uppercase noise as in the formal genre of noise music, which tends to be associated with very loud and kind of limited to the loud range dynamics. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scholar of the lowercase distinction, but that tends to be the elevator pitch, is that finding smaller sounds, still noises, still non-tonal, harmonic or melodic, that secret third thing, noise, timbre focused, but focusing on lower decibel ranges and potentially heightened and enhanced in volume, very quiet sounds, almost like a predating ASMR in a sound art and tasteful context, and not just the sound of people chewing. Joe Cawley is a great example of what I am talking about. Okay, definitely check them out. I mean, I know even artists like Claire Rousset have been in and out of this world. Claire initially starting more in free improv and percussion, and slowly veering more into this lowercase tape music, which utilizing a lot of found sounds and field recordings, as well as the voice and other more sort of auxiliary percussion, and then now finding ways to incorporate some of these sounds into more straightforward songwriting. So there's various ways this could manifest itself. But I think what Wish Fulfillment is doing here, if it's part of a live set, leaves a lot of questions unanswered that I'm really curious about. Like, how much louder are we going to get? Are we going to stay dynamically in this zone? Are we going to develop more harmonically? Are we going to develop more rhythmically? And if this is something that's going to be on a record, not necessarily just a live set, but are we planning on keeping it as one singular piece? You know, is this a long form arc with multiple chapters, multiple movements? Or are we thinking about splitting what could be a single live set into individual tracks in which someone might be encouraged to skim around or repeat certain sections? You know, that's the little conundrum in fine art, sound art, and high society chamber hall electroacoustic music, academic electroacoustic music is do we want to meaning at one point I was fully invested in that world, in folks of that nature, do they want to create song length movements of their pieces, even if it's a cycle of smaller works that in which you would see it live? There wouldn't be applause, there wouldn't be real breaks, there might be a quick sip of water, or reorienting oneself, but not you wouldn't really feel it in the same way as you would a set list of tracks. So it's a good question to think about this in context of live set versus album, because obviously with album, playing a single 30-minute audio file obviously encourages you to really sit down and be patient with it, but it might discourage something that you might enjoy, which is like, oh man, those first 10 minutes really captivated me in a way that I want to hear that isolated on its own, that one could with a, split up into tracks album version. Something to think about. I just like to imagine this in both the performance setting as well as home listening, and pragmatically speaking, like, who are we trying to reach with this, with an album? If we were to put this on the avant-garde recording pipeline of sorts. Yeah, stuff to think about. Fantastic way to start this off. Big ups to Wish Fulfillment, and hope to hear more of this nature from you very soon. All right, get some water in here. We got Carson up next. We got a work in progress, an unmixed track from Carson Mark. How I Feel is the name of the track, and it looks like you here in the chat with us. If you want to give us a little background on what we're going to hear in the chat, anything you want us to know that I can read out afterwards, I'm just going to play it. How I Feel unmixed. Let's see how you feel. All right. Yes, it was something completely different. You know how we do here. No such thing as genre. Well, yes, there is, but no such thing as one true genre. All sounds, all styles welcome, including, we call this, new garage. I don't know. Garage and its grandchildren. Garage and its relatives. Absolutely digging your rhythm here. Gotta love the shuffle. Gotta love a hard swing. Gotta love that exactly. Yes, this is that real two-stepping. Tim wrote. Someone tell those hardcore kids that this is what two-stepping is. Exactly. Imagine hardcore two-stepping to this and vice versa. Opening up the pit to this. This is some real funk. I'm a huge fan of your arrangement here. I think that you have pretty much all the elements that you could need. I know you're looking specifically, as you wrote in the chat, like feedback on production and arrangement. Feeling a bit stuck and working on this for a little bit. Personally, before getting into just like mix ideas, I mean, if there's one thing melodically beyond the "You Know How I Feel" sample drop, if there's something that could act as counterpoint towards the end, second half of this, after we're fully locked into the occasional "You Know How I Feel," some other soulful, melodic, monophonic, but specifically melodic instrument that responds to that. You know, I was almost imagining like reverberated sax, like something incredibly sensual and smooth, responding to this longing, this yearning, and melancholy in the vocal sample. Just as an arrangement note, that would be the only thing that I'm just like waiting on. I was just waiting on something after like halfway, 2/3 of the way. You know how I feel. Then break for a little bit. I don't know. Something counter melody. Yeah, exactly. Counter melody. I just like developing it to that final place that it's not really about it getting louder. It's not really about it building into like a bigger sound. It's just more about like completing the conversation that this is sort of starting, because it's really creating narrative even with just one word. You know how I feel. That's all you're saying, but we're hearing this, you know, in classic garage tradition, this foggy, rainy melancholy. It's still funky, it's still making me groove, obviously, but it's not happy. You know, it's not forcing you up onto your feet. It's like grooving while sitting by yourself somewhere. And again, classic. I always say this with Burial, but just like sitting on the bus in your own zone, hearing this and groove into it. But there's also this longing and melancholy at its core that when you leave us with one phrase verbally, lyrically, it sort of sets that in stone when paired with, you know, it's not big major chords. It's not big happy-go-lucky progression here. It does have a bit of a tinge of introspection, of moodiness to it, you know. And I feel like just having something to counter that, whether it be confirming you feel sad, you know how I feel melancholic, or potentially the opposite, and trying to get you out of the seat, you know, like really like bringing us to a final place that feels like, while laying into the soul and laying into like proper counter melody that's complementary. there might be emotionally leaving us somewhere final, that we didn't start off at, just my thoughts on that. Different ideas in the chat here as far as production goes. Breathplay saying, want to keep the squeeze sound, just put more dirt on everything. I mean, yeah, it does feel, it is unmixed right now. That is labeled unmixed. So I wasn't really thinking about the audio engineering besides the production, creating the instruments and choice of instruments. But I think production and composition are kind of, hand in hand with this versus mixing, and it's more the audio engineering post-production. But yeah, I think saturation, slightly making it just feel a little more saturated, a little less in the box would be good. Just a little bit of dirt on everything, never really hurt anybody. Kind of might add a little almost 90s tapey quality to it. Okay, so the squeeze that you wrote might just be a YouTube artifact. It's not compressed. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm hearing it live in my ear. It's pretty squeezed on my end. If you feel like this isn't squeezed, you should probably squeeze it a little bit less. It might be heavy on the squeeze. I thought that was an intentional choice just because Garage just has that ducking so heavily throughout that. Some hard compression going on that. If you feel like if that's not what you're going for, you might want to lay back on that a bit. You might want to create a bit more of a natural dynamic range that's not as enhanced with compression, because there is quite a bit of compression on this. Someone else wrote, production is sick, some touch up on the mix and you're there. I think the arrangement shape is really good. Max onto something with the vocal needing something more. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, again, like I wasn't listening to this thinking about mix right now. But yeah, if you are trying to have a more natural dynamic range and compression is not something you want like super audible as its own sort of aesthetic choice, then you definitely got to use more now. Because the way that it stands right now, it's pretty punched. It's pretty punched up. It's pretty boxed in. It's pretty, dare I say, compressed. Okay, so you do like it hella compressed. It just sounded even heavier over the stream. Interesting. Well, yeah, that's some lossy audio for you. Definitely some fly low influence on that. We give the UK all the credit on the contemporary. Garage, obviously, a product of London, but before that, it was New York garage. Let's get one thing straight. It was New York garage before it was London garage. But the funk, the soulfulness, there's a not just fly low, but Stones Throw Records sound to this as well. Big fan of my dare I will name drop my friend Alfred Darrington, aka Daedalus of Stones Throw Records, who manages to have a very interesting, despite being a West Coaster, now living on the East Coast, I feel like has always had this interesting international sound that isn't necessarily pigeonholed either coast of the States or the other side of the pond. You can definitely hear these influences there, but this is really nice. I want to hear more voices. I want to hear that counter melody in there, and I feel like we would fully arrive, and then we can worry about fucking it up with saturation and hiss and dirt and smudging it into oblivion. Yeah, just some air. Could use some air on it. Thank you, Carson. Looking forward to hearing more from you, man. Digging it. All right. We're going to keep it going. Karim Sharif, Cactus Flower. Karim. Throwing this one into the ring, please ignore the lyrics and vocal takes. They're placeholders while I work on writing the actual lyrics and melody. That said, looking for any and all feedback and everything else. Artist name is just my name. Website link in bio. Where's the bio? In your Discord bio? Okay, I'll link to that in the show notes after the fact. I believe this is the track that you shared yesterday on our Patreon stream, which for those that are listening in, great way to support what we are doing here with our Sonic Arts clinics. That's just the best way to call this, Sonic Arts Clinician. When I'm not teaching privately, this is it. Sonic Arts Clinician, Group Critique Clinician. Feel free to join that with people such as Karim. Patreon.com/Parrotsky. All right, Cactus Flower, work in progress. Let's get it. give it up for Karim, who made it just in time in the chat. 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, party, 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 etc., etc. Lovely stuff. We listen to this. I've heard this before. We'll discuss it. We will discuss it. And it looks like Tim agrees with what I had spoken about yesterday over the Patreon stream. Well, first of all, lovely voice. Love your dynamic range here. Love keeping it energetic, but also not taking it too far dynamically, maintaining the dream pop, I guess, elements here, and maintaining a bit of surrealism, a bit of sleepiness to it. Very much enjoy that, and you got a great voice. Got a great voice. I said that yesterday, but even if this is placeholder until you come up with more specific lyrics, which, again, first thing I had said last time, and I'll say it again, when you get your lyrics written, when you finalize that element, we need those front and center in this. You're making pop music, and we need to hear what you are saying. I don't believe this to be shoegazy in the sense of letting it blend and ride in the back. To me, this requires close proximity and allowing you to be the lead vocalist of this project here. And that requires, just from a vocal mix perspective, hard limiting, front and center. Don't let us have, because you're singing quietly too, you're not belting away, but that doesn't mean that decibel wise it should be quiet. It should actually be pretty loud, pretty prominent in that. So right off the bat, just thinking about this being pop music, like that's a yeah. So that goes in the next thing, talking about the bass. There's another comment here. I'm a bass player, but that bass is really eating your mix's lunch. It is certainly the most prominent thing right now, specifically the picking, specifically the brightness of the picking. Because we have that in juxtaposition, it's playing more of this rhythm guitar role compared to the finger picking, or if it's just softer, or even if it's just like synth bass, doom 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 doom, the walking bass, in juxtaposition to the chugging bass. It's a bass fest. If you've ever seen Tom Goes to the Mayor, the Tim and Eric show, bass fest is what this is. So we have to find a way to, I would say, think about which section deserves what. I wouldn't necessarily want to stack. I would want to create more moments where the chugging bass becomes special, rather than having it be used to the point where it's becoming a more of a lead instrument. I would rather it come in on the chorus, or find moments where it can replace the more walking doo 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 doo. Finding a way for it to feel like it's one instrument, going from playing style 1 to playing style 2, or turning on X effects versus Y, depending on where it is in the song. It should be a prominent part of the song. Like, I'm not saying like stop doing the chugging part, but combining that with how often it's happening, with how loud it is right now, it's definitely taking up a big chunk of our attention, when the voice, and honestly, like the counterpoint to the voice being some of these synths that you're playing, to me feel more like the lead instruments. I know you're going for a sort of new order, post-punk sort of take on the bass playing here, like really chugging it, like it's playing more of a rhythm guitar sort of role. But I think that there should still be dynamic range where that takes a slightly back seat, because it's audible, and that brightness of the picking specifically cuts through. That could go down a good 10 dB and it will still cut through. And also a good point here. I know we're here to talk about the music and not production tips. Production tips are totally welcome. Who said that? Nobody said that. I'm saying give production tips if you think of them. He wrote, but consider letting that plucky pick bass be less compressed. Maybe even re-record it with a mute. Could just use a cut-up sponge. Interesting technique here. I dig that. Okay, so Karim's saying this is a temporary track for now. You got a mute they're going to use. Muted electric bass. Now they thought of everything. What the heck? That would be nice. Just a boom. Just real damper on that, where it's just tight and percussive, and it doesn't ring out in brightness. It just attacks in brightness. That sponge thing is legit. I like that idea. I want to see footage of that. I gotta look into this. As a real true bass aficionado, obviously, I need to get to the bottom of this. Max Alper investigates. Finding a way to tighten up the bass. But from an arrangement perspective, I think moments, and I think Tim also wrote that, like finding where is the right time to cut that into, like, let it be either the finger picking style of the other bass track, or playing it a little less percussively, less staccato, a little more sustained even, or just kind of open chorded, because you are playing it like a rhythmic guitar, something to think about there. It doesn't need to be muted the whole time. It could play a different role. Could go well beyond where it's at right now percussively, if we were to just let it hold for a whole note occasionally and just hear the harmonics of it ring out. Some thoughts on that there. But first and foremost, for me, my ear wants more vocals front and center, and I want to hear what you're saying when you get it, when you got your lyrics down. Remember to put them way up there. Reprocessed version of the opening sound sent through a Chiat Lombard stuff. Interesting. Classic. Yeah, because that's based on Carson's comment saying, really lovely bit crushed element in the background, and I appreciate that it was there for a minute to really provide some timbral interest, then it dropped out. Yeah, nice intro and nice outro too. You had another 30 seconds at the end once everything cut out. That's just sort of allowed for a sort of textural bed to sleep in, to put this one to rest. Ending songs harder than beginning songs. Agree or disagree? I think a lot of people have trouble ending tracks. I think we've laid too much into just the sudden cutout or the fade out, the dreaded fade out. We used that for a while. Merciful Fate. I mean, yeah, there is a lot of power metal fade outs in history. I mean, it's just a classic rock thing. It's an all-encompassing late 60s through late 80s, even in the 90s. I don't know. Someone find me an article about the death of the fade out. It's got to exist. It's got to exist. Maybe we'll bring it back. It is hard, though. Definitely not easy how to wrap it up. So I appreciated the way you wrapped this one up. I do. This isn't trying to be just like a cookie cutter, even as a pop song. The form. Ending it with something like that and beginning it with something like that very patiently. Really, really, really nice. Looking forward to hearing more. Give me them vocals right up front. Find a way to make the bass more effective, slightly less prominent in the mix. And you got a stew going. I mean, you got a stew going now. But then that stew will be ready to plate and serve to hungry diners. You know what I'm saying? Give him the stew. Thank you, Karim. Give him the stew. We going on. We are continuing on. I keep taking my water. Stay hydrated. Thank you, Karim. We got the Sneakers. Is it the Sneakers or Cara? Is the band the Sneakers or is the band Cara? The Sneakers is the band. The track is called Cara. Is somebody involved in that here today? Would love to know if you're here. If not, didn't leave any note for us. We're just going to listen to it and talk about it. If not, feel free to make yourself known. Let's get it. The Sneakers, Cara.
She left and came home early from the bar, and the view so lonely from the car. With her head hung like the moon, she could not sleep and visit all the empty dreams she could not keep. And I remember every open door I slammed on her. I took every moment as if it were mine to take, but I won't look back now for Cara. No, I won't look back now. Even fire does not sting like honesty. When diamond rings get thrown into the sea, never to be found again, they sink too far. Pull down like the rain on the window of the car. When I remember every open door I slammed on her, when I took every moment as if it were mine to take, but I won't look back now for Cara. No, I won't look back now.
Give it up for the Sneakers with the track Cara. This is quite lovely. I gotta say, you know, I wasn't quite sure at first because we're dealing with obviously. Speaking of melancholy, you know, this is subdued. This is every verse feels like we're leading towards a louder moment. And even when we turned on the distortion in the guitar towards the end for some chugging there, but we really remain in this one dynamic range that feels just like gripped with restraint. Feels like you're holding back something, and that could be a artistic choice here to not fully show your full hand and break into a much louder hook. You know, when you turn on the distortion, I was just imagining like an explosion of sound, but there is a restraint to this that serves the melancholy. It doesn't quite resolve the way that we want into some big moment, but I kind of like that. You know, I was like, I feel like you were teasing us a bit with it, but then it's like we're getting used to it, just as if we're just like sitting in the car, not going inside yet, just like in a downpour. It's grounding me in this place that doesn't need to necessarily pay off with big dynamics. And the piano is a really nice touch on that. It creates a smokiness to it. It creates an almost, it feels, I hate to say Lynchian, but it creates this surreal, because you're singing in a classic alt rock, you know, we call it Melissa Cross, very famous vocal coach who's taught a lot of metal and rock musicians throughout the 90s up through today. You know, she calls it, you're either singing cold, which is just straight tone, you're singing heat, which is like a little bit of, which is, I believe, really where you are, and then you're singing fire, which is all like, all screaming, no pitch. You're singing heat right here, which is a classic alt rock sort of vocal delivery here. But part of me, even just from it doesn't need to be dynamically much of a change, but from an arrangement wise, like, I think two things, and one of them Tim had said in the chat, is that like breaking down to an acapella, giving us and it doesn't necessarily need to be a breakdown to acapella, but like subtracting the majority of the instrumentation and leaving us with just your voice, maybe just guitar and voice for 8 clicks or something before dropping back into the verse or something, but giving us that intimacy of just you and your voice, I think will, like, hell man, it's sexy, dude. It's like, this is sensual. Like, we're making pop music here. We're making lyrical music where you are front and center here singing a love song. I think that, like, giving us that closeness to you without instrumentation or without accompaniment, at least the majority of it, if not, if you want to go full a cappella, I'd be curious how you could do that. But I feel like just from, or just piano, teasing the piano in the voice or something. There we go. That's something interesting right there. But giving us a moment to just be with you, I think would serve this in quite a way. And then the opposite, at the end, sing on top of yourself. Let's hear some harmony. Let's hear some stacked. Da 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 da. On top of your low end, at least a 2-part. I was hearing it in my head especially when you drop the distortion in the last quarter of the piece. Something here that builds. Doesn't need to be a big drop. Doesn't need to be a big loud moment here or something like that. But I think that something additional that adds drama at the end, something there would be really nice. Just my thoughts on that. I think the idea of pulling the football away every single time is very clever, but if you're going to do it, lean into it a little more yet. You mean like dynamically pulling the football away, not giving us that payback like I'm talking about here. if that's the case, then yeah, like doubling down on giving us more quiet moments, like ground us even more in the smaller dynamics here if we're not going to get loud. I think that we just right now where we are is like a middle ground of dynamics that doesn't really move above or below it. If we could stay here as our peak, we could get quieter. We can get really really intimate here. Yeah, writing, it feels like it's going to go double time like twice or three times. I agree. It feels like we're about to just build it up into something here. Feels almost like Mogwai. Feels very post-rock in that like we are waiting for a big distortion drop. It's teasing at that. If we're not going to go there, if this is the loudest that it gets, I think we should counter that with quieter moments. And if we're not going to build an instrumentation beyond this, not necessarily to get louder, we can at least build in the elements, such as your voice, to lay into the drama a bit, to create this building tension. It has to release somewhere, it could very well just be, not overthinking it here. Harmonic vocals on the chorus, very effective at laying the message across. Something like that. Just, I want some resolution. I want some resolution on that. I do appreciate it not getting loud. I do appreciate it remaining restrained. Like I said, I wasn't sure, but the more you did it, the more I enjoyed it. But I think that we should just ground it in more exaggerated, intimate moments if we're not going to get past where we are here dynamically, if this is the peak, I guess it's really just about intention, we talked about this last time, like choice of dynamics in production and in performance. I mean, we think about this playing live instruments like guitars and piano, how loud we're playing something relating to how hard we're strumming or slamming on keys or whatever, or finger picking. But this has to be like a conscious decision from composition through performance through production and post-production. Dynamic range of the track has to be not an afterthought. This has to be really in the forefront going on here. And that includes simply riding the levels at the end of the mix. You could absolutely, if you want to maintain the energy here and you still want to have a little bit more oomph at the end, give us 6 to 10 more dB second half into, throughout the second half. Like, let it build in output. I think that there's room for more nuanced dynamic changes here so that we don't feel necessarily flattened throughout. This is something that is not necessarily at the forefront of people's thought process when listening back to something, is the dynamic range, but it's unspoken when you're with the band playing this. Of course, we're going to feel this first verse a little bit quieter than the end. If you were playing this live, I guarantee you it would be a slightly different delivery at the very end here. And I just want that to be conveyed through the recording just as much as it might be live. Not sure with your group, the Sneakers, how many of y'all are in there if it's a solo project with a nice little band-like moniker to it. But something to think about. We're listening to a recording. Let's think about it in the recording context about a dynamic range, and just making sure that that's conveyed to a full deliberate extent. If you want to keep it minimal dynamic range and keep it the way relatively it is, let's make that even more clear. If not, let's give us more dynamic. Take it up 3 BPM police style. There's some classic. There's just a little bit of that human rushing at the very end right there. Really, really lovely. Thank you to the Sneakers for sharing that. Lovely, lovely stuff. We got a nice little eclectic mix of tracks today. All right, let's do one more for today. We got plenty in the queue still. We'll do this as a good 90-minute stream for today. We're gonna have Musique Machine on here. Musique Machine. Good friend Josh, who's also here in the chat, it seems, told me, as in you, the person writing this, about this, aka this stream, and I think it's the best idea. I did an arts degree in undergrad. It took so much away from critiques. I'm glad that this translates then. It's not often that we get to do this, and the few contexts in which this is a common thing, usually within the art and music school critiques. This is a new track I'm working on for my solo project, Musique Machine. The track is Spyglass. And once again, this is something we had heard yesterday in our Patreon stream, which everyone should join at patreon.com/parrotski. Spyglass miniature mix. Let's get it. Oh no. Oh no. Private link. Now, oh, what the fuck? What the heck? Where'd it go? What the heck? Did it work? Hold on. Where'd it go? Where did the track go? Oh no. Oh no. It got taken offline? What if I play it from the link that you had shared in the other Discord? Would that work? Yeah, it seems like this is a different track, and I don't want to play it without your permission though. That's the thing. Oh man. Oh man. This is a different track. Hold on. It don't work. What if I send them a message real quick and just reply and let them know? Link is private. Please send public version while we're live now. Josh, if you could let them know. If you could let them know that it ain't working, I will come back to it. But for now, just because I don't want to necessarily play something they didn't want on the public stream that they played in the private one yesterday, I'm going to move on for now. Please let them know. And, okay, cool. You just texted her. Amazing. Let them respond. All right, we'll do two more. If Musique Machine can send the public link, then we will do it. And switching it back to private in a few hours. Whoops. Oh, see, that's what it was. They did the temporary public. Well, we need it temporarily public again because we're live now. All right, but for now, we're going to move on. And hopefully she gets back to us. We got Ad Nauseum up next with Mistakes Were Made. Did you leave a note from the previous stream about this or no? I don't know. Did you? I'm just scrolling. Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, we're gonna listen to it and we shall discuss. Where'd it go? Disregard above. This is the one. Okay, well, this is the one. This is the one we're going to listen to then. Ad Nauseum. Mistakes were made. Item was deleted. Oh, come on, y'all. Y'all can't be doing me like this. You can't be doing me like this. Stop deleting things if it's not played on the first episode. We have to keep this queue open. We gotta keep these files available. Come on, y'all. You're killing me. please. I won't have time to download it right then and there. We need to keep these links live if you want me to play it. Okay. Keeping on here with another track. Gonna move on once again. Reposted my second track for the next time. Anonymous submission. Alright, Anonymous. Looking again for feedback on vocal mix and composition with the track Utter Disbelief. We getting into another Dropbox link that is hopefully live. Yes, it is. Alright, here we go. Utter Disbelief.
Sitting in square 3, unbeknownst to me was another chapter unfolding. Sharp with some harsh scoldings, hard as a soldier, the helmet on backwards for the culture. Bombs exploding, not in my backyard, but I can hear those echoes closely. In my pretty town square, onlookers posted. Bikes and strollers, a life I can't imagine upholding. Pen down triggers the cold feet, even though I'm compelled to illustrate who I'm supposed to be. Too wrapped up in how the language molds me. Words was everything, toes planted as I walked the road below, but on rails the mind was roller coastering. Alas, the message is always sober, misconceptions at all. Whatever way it was penned is what I need to recall. My thoughts thinking that I was alone was a plot from those who aimed to control. Those silly bots, I spilled juice on the console and they were shocked. Those memories I stole, chips in the bag, I cashed them in and made it last. Hands too quick, too fast, type the hacks in and dash. My ideas were meant for me. Was it a mistake to share them? I'm in complete and utter disbelief. All those things that should have been apparent.
Take it away when I'm slow. Wires are fade, out it's a mess. Nothing to save, nothing I guess. But I guess I got some faith in the stress, making them plays.
Playing around with a lawyer, keystrokes cranking my target. Nothing the same, I've been outside the game. Surfing the options, hanging over the top. Streets have been walking, holding it down in the city of Boston. I make a name out of many appearances, bound to keep my thoughts toxic. What is he trying to prove? Scribbling down a shoe, looking insane and confused. Scanning the room, stumbling over myself, making my way to the side. For too good to be true, it was the kicks of the lie. Put myself down in the bruise, yeah, but the meaning was too wide. Double the speech when I rhyme, double the speech when I rhyme, double the speech when I.
Yo, sitting in square 5, unbeknownst to me that a new chapter was live. Sharp wits from feeding fire, arm hair's been singed, making amends for life. Too bad the act is just an infinite repent. I tell them other guys to get bent as I make felt the pen, push it through the page to the other side. The book is what I recommend. Wrote down whatever made sense at the time, still I had to go back and read it again.
Right. Very nice. Give it up for Anonymous. Once again, bringing us some Anonymous deconstructed spitting. If this is the same MC, then from the same Anonymous MC from last week, giving us that oversaturation in production, that maximalism in production, then this is quite the opposite. Giving us this deconstructed minimalist and just straightforward guitar vamping going on here, and finding various grids of flow over the solo guitar. I mean, I think that like it's very clear juxtaposition between the guitar recording and the vocal performance, and the vocal recording being very much in front, but then going through the tried and true tropes of doubles and ad-libs. It works really well. Part of me just wants, if you're open to it, finding ways to deconstruct the guitar even further, finding ways to create some variation in that. Not that the repetitive and solo guitar nature is a bad thing. Part of me is just like wishes like if we could like have one of the verses with like a deeply cut low pass filter or something where we're hearing it only in the low end, you know, finding ways to create peaks and valleys of very sudden arrangement shifts without necessarily having to change the instrumentation or to do anything beyond solo guitar recording and voice, but just through production technique, whether it be filtering, like I said, whether it be doubling into a lower octave or a higher octave, finding ways to just pitch creatively, finding ways to take it out of the live guitar performance and the tone of the guitar as a live instrument and more as a sound object to be sampled and shifted through production technique. Finding a way to really produce it, you know? I don't feel that it's meant to just be this live instrument of the guitar as its own. I feel like it could be of service that much more to you, being that it's not about the guitar. It's about an accompanying instrumental for you, the MC. And I feel like there are things and changes that occur in arrangement to your voice that could be somewhat matched or somewhat have a correspondence with the instrumental recording as it stands, without having to add and stack other sounds onto it. Are there things that we can do to the guitar in post that we're able to do that could change this up when your vocals change up? Unless, again, this is about making deliberate choices, I think that there is also a statement being made in having this very stark juxtaposition between heavily produced MC vocals and intentionally underproduced live guitar accompaniment that doesn't develop past the progression, that doesn't change dynamically or in production technique, that kind of stays where it is. That would be its own postmodern sort of approach here. I guess the question is just like, what are you going for here? Because there are already seemingly live effects applied to the guitar at various points, but to me, it still feels live in that way. Is that something that you want to maintain or not? Right now, it feels slightly gray area to me. It could absolutely do that, but I would find ways to then develop the voice even more, create even more of a juxtaposition between the liveness and untouched recording straight out of the amp with the pedal board of the guitar, and your voice being this like heavily in the studio, well produced MC voice. This is just, again, compositional intention has to be thought of, and arrangement and dynamics are so key to that. It's just really something that like, I don't know, if you're going for this minimalism, I would find ways to just make that even more clear. Personally, I think it should be produced, not an afterthought, like produced in process to match what is happening in the change in arrangement to your voice. That's me personally. Would love to hear what y'all think in the response to that. Writing, I agree. The warped feel is great production wise. The vocals and the guitar are clashing in some frequency bands right now. In a good way? Clashing in a good way? Or you feel as a fault? Reprocess it a second time, just for one verse. Earnest question. how do you make minimal choices feel more intentional? I mean, I think that would also be how the guitar is performed as well. You know, imagine it not just being like full plucked, but like finding ways to like more gently play some of these things. Another way to do that is to just strip it back even more, finding ways to make this seem like even less. I would love for there to be full a cappella sections of this. Why are we playing around with a duo? Let's go solo at one point. That's very much in the vein of like clipping, like Daveed Diggs's work. Like, I'm a huge fan of their intros on their albums because they're some of the least beat oriented. If you want to call their full productions beats, go for it. But in their intros, it's usually an arrhythmic, basically a cappella recording, like in their first few records, where it's just a feedback loop or a low end hum while Daveed Diggs spits, and then it breaks into either the next song or it explodes into a wall of noise. But it is basically a cappella, and it's incredibly powerful when it suddenly shifts from a long form a cappella that's stacked as well. Like, it's not just a cappella solo voice live one take. It is incredibly produced, and then shifts suddenly into an arrangement or an instrumental, or in that case, wall of noise. But in this case, I mean, I can imagine there being both the recording of the guitar, finding ways to like mute, finding ways to play more gently at certain points, more intimately, to create variation in delivering of that, but then also stripping away even further and finding moments that we can hold a chord potentially, there or some sort of sustain from the last section while you spit entirely unaccompanied for 4 bars or 8 clicks or something like that. The artist name that I was talking about is the group is Clipping, but the rapper of that is Daveed Diggs, Daveed Diggs. He's great. I never really heard him rap before I heard Clipping, and I had heard Clipping or got into Clipping as a noise guy. But you know, Daveed Diggs is like Broadway and Hollywood actor as well, like clearly trained in classically trained in theater and music. Tight delivery, even in its most a cappella. You could hear the click, his natural tempo in that. And Anonymous, you once again, like, this is a different delivery than your previous verses on the previous tracks you had played. This feels far more straightforward and less wonky, intentionally wonky, of like the previous one. You're showing your range here too, which I appreciate. You know, we don't get too many rappers. And like I said, this is what it's all about, man. We encourage a variety of musical backgrounds to join us on this. Karim writes, I'm thinking more as a fault, the frequency bands that are clashing. It blurs the delivery, which doesn't feel aligned with some of the other stylistic choices. Okay. In that case, I mean, like, think about ways of, if I'd have to think about which moments you're talking about, Karim, but to me, it's making me think of, like, if there are frequencies that are clashing, finding ways to, what I was talking about, like a hard LPF, a hard filter on the guitar at a certain point where we're dealing with a almost abstracted low end only accompaniment, in which all that we're left in the highs is the voice itself, like creating that much distance between the frequencies, between accompaniment and lead vocals. We could find much more room to have, you know, a bit of range without clashing. I don't know. Different ideas here. Okay, Word, you in the chat now. Well, good shit. Thank you once again for sharing. I'm becoming a big fan. All right, we're going to wrap it with one more. Apparently, oh yeah, Shabazz Palaces. Shabazz Palaces. Big fan of that. All right, we're going back to Musique Machine. Apparently, the Spyglass link is public now. There it is. There it is. All right. Playing us out today. Spyglass Miniature Mix by Musique Machine. Let's go. Give it up for Musique. Machines. 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. Definitely different than some of the more Italo disco directly inspired or directly emulating Italo disco sounds that you had shown to us yesterday on the Patreon. Some good feedback going on here in the chats talking about the tempo and the looseness of certain elements versus the tightness of others. And I mean, there's definitely a contrast there. We could definitely hear the slight sort of shifts between what is tightly quantized versus what is soft gridded, not necessarily as hard and rigid in there. And I feel like, going again also what Breathplay said about tempo, we could keep this juxtaposition, this contrast between hard and soft quantization, but make it just slightly more, playing it slightly more effectively at a faster tempo, because rather than hearing it as this like da-da, da-da, like there are certain moments where we could really hear that da-da between hard gridded and soft gridded, but if it was up at a more another 20 or so BPM faster, it would sound more like a flam, the drumstick technique where you're like brah, where you have things that are not perfectly synced but slightly off from each other. If it's slightly faster, we aren't hearing it as space between, where while one is still decaying, the other is right in there. So it's more like brr. It's more like a blip of two sounds, and it to me it would feel that much more of a live percussiveness to it. It would feel that much more intentionally like this flam, this drum technique that I'm thinking of here. I feel like nothing really needs to change as far as arrangement or thinking about the choice of what's quantized and what's not. I appreciate hearing these intentional imperfections here, but without it becoming at certain points a little distracting, I feel like tempo could be the answer here, that we could keep everything pretty much the way it is, but not have it be nearly as prominent. It becomes more of a percussive gesture. If drummers know about the flam, drummers know about playing something slightly delayed left hand to right hand. That's how we enter the pocket, you know? Just something to think about as far as tempo goes. And also, like, yeah, I mean, I kind of do want to be grooving to this a little bit faster. It feels too it feels too spooky. It feels too ominous at a down tempo, if you ask me. I feel like this could still be within the disco, within the Italo disco world. But BPM is so important when it comes to these various subgenres of electronic music, but I feel like just combining that with the way that it's produced right now, and this, like you'd said in the chat, this is a 2-track live hardware jam, where you are playing the drums were played live together, and then the synths were overdubbed, and the vocoder was overdubbed. So you're not necessarily like doing this all in stems, finding ways to submix certain things. Tim writes, I gotta say I like it at this 105 first hour B2 tempo. Curious to hear it up. Yeah, what are we at right now tempo wise? 105-ish? I don't know. I can imagine this stronger at 125 to 130. Breathplay, I think even pushing it beyond Italo into tweaky Aphex wriggle could be a fun experiment. Getting into some, you know, 106. All right. Pretty close, Tim. Pretty damn close there. I feel like tempo experiments are something that should be thought about with this. 105 is tricky. 105 is tricky because it's too fast for us to think about halftime, but it's too slow for us to really be thinking about four to the floor in the more typical way. This puts you in down-tempo territory, which is tricky. It's very tricky. But I'm just saying, combining the elements alongside choice of quantization versus non-quantized sounds, or harshly gridded versus softly gridded. I feel like this is something that if we were to bring it up, it would solve most of our problems. Too speaky for Ibiza, too slow for Berlin. Wow. I would take that as a compliment. I would take that as a great compliment. Just right for Florence, Italy. If that's the aim. I do love the Italo disco. And I do love hearing that arpeggiated bass in contrast to this wailing, both in the padded synths and the vocoder, kind of like portamentoing very slowly. You know, going in and out of what like is seemingly intentional consonants versus these sort of transitional moments of dissonance. Really enjoying your harmonic choices here. I know we focused entirely on rhythm and tempo on this. Your strengths here are your harmonic and melodic choices here. I feel like just a little bit more attention and intention regarding tempo, I think will make some of these discrepancies in the rhythm much more aligned with what's happening here, much more like a proper gesture and not necessarily a distraction. Lovely stuff. A great way to wrap it for today with some work. Spyglass by Musique Machine. Thank you all for hanging out this evening. We heard some lovely tracks. We heard 6 tracks today. Really lovely stuff from everyone. And once again, best way to support this, join the Patreon and come hang out on Sundays as well. But feel like throw me a tip, you can do that at the Venmo link. Feel free to get in touch for private lessons. Got a few more openings up this month. The ebbing and flowing of people's schedules means that I got plenty of flexibility on that. If anyone's looking for some private instruction, that is what I do when I'm not doing this and not playing my own music. It's really a one-man music school at this point. It's a lovely thing. Hell yeah. We're going to be back at it same time next week, as well as our Sunday afternoon Patreon session. And I hope to see y'all again real soon. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to another edition of Group Critique Fight Club with me, Max Alper, aka Parrotsky. You can sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/Parrotsky to get access to our Sunday Zoom school on top of the regular live public stream. Public stream takes place every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. All are welcome. And you are listening to the track Atop Alpdog Mountain, Ja Plays Pokemon Go by me.